I'm Lena, I'm 28 years old, I'm a woman, and my family expected me to step aside from a luxury vacation I paid for so my sister's new boyfriend could take my place. They treated me like a walking bank account, an inconvenient footnote in their family story. They assumed, as they always had, that I would swallow my feelings, put on a brave face, and be the bigger person. They had no idea that the bigger person had finally gotten tired of shrinking herself to make them comfortable. They had no idea what kind of immediate, trip-ruining karma was waiting for them the second I turned my back and walked away. My family operates on an unspoken set of rules, a constitution written in invisible ink that everyone is expected to follow. Rule number 1, and the most important, has always been, Chloe comes first. My younger sister, Chloe, is the sun around which our family orbits. My parents, Mark and Susan, are her devoted planets, and I've always been treated like a distant, functional satellite, useful for bouncing signals off of, but never the main attraction. She is 25, a freelance artist with a spirit as free as her finances are unstable. She is beautiful and charming, capable of spinning a web of whimsy that leaves my parents utterly enchanted. I, on the other hand, am the responsible one. I'm a software engineer, a planner, a saver. My life is built on logic and code, a stable structure that my family has always been happy to lean on, but never particularly interested in exploring. This dynamic wasn't built overnight. It's the result of 1,000 tiny cuts, a lifetime of moments that solidified my role as the supportive, reliable background character. I remember my 10th birthday vividly. I had asked for one thing, a specific, top-of-the-line telescope. I had a star chart on my wall and had been saving up my allowance for months to contribute. My parents told me they would handle it. On my birthday morning, there it was, a magnificent telescope in a huge box. I was ecstatic, but my joy was short-lived. Later that day, Chloe fell off her bike and scraped her knee, resulting in a dramatic, tear-filled trip to the emergency room. It only needed a cartoon-themed bandage. She was so distraught that my parents decided she needed a special gift to cheer her up. That evening, my father quietly explained that Chloe had always been fascinated by the moon. He said it would be a family gesture if I agreed to let the telescope be a gift for her instead. To keep the peace, I was told. I was 10 years old, and I was already being taught that my joy was negotiable, and my sister's fleeting sadness was a 5-alarm fire. I nodded numbly and watched as my birthday present was moved into her room. Another time, years later, was my college graduation. I was the first person in our immediate family to get a university degree, let alone in a challenging field like engineering. I had worked tirelessly, pulling all-nighters and sacrificing my social life to graduate with honors. My parents had promised to throw a big party to celebrate. The week before the party, Chloe announced that she had been accepted into a 3-week, non-accredited pottery workshop in another state. The workshop started on the same day as my planned graduation party. Without a moment's hesitation, my parents canceled my celebration. Their reasoning? They needed to help Chloe pack and drive her to the workshop orientation. "You understand, Lena," my mother had said, patting my arm. "This is a huge step for her. A party is just a party, but this is her future." My 4 years of hard work were dismissed as just a party, while my sister's latest hobby was treated like a Nobel Prize nomination. I ended up celebrating with a pizza and 2 friends in my dorm room. The financial double standards were perhaps the most grating. I was expected to be fully independent from the moment I started my first internship. I paid for my own car, my own rent, and my own tuition fees that weren't covered by scholarships. Meanwhile, Chloe's rent was a permanent line item in my parents' budget. Her car insurance, her phone bill, her endless supply of art materials, it was all covered without question. If she was short on cash, my parents would dip into their savings. If I ever hinted at a financial strain, I was given a lecture on budgeting and responsibility. It wasn't that I wanted their money, it was the principle. They celebrated my independence while actively cultivating her dependence, and then praised her for being a free spirit while labeling me as rigid and overly serious. So, when Chloe started dating Kevin 6 months ago, it was no surprise that my family fell for him instantly. He was an aspiring musician, which in my parents' eyes was practically the same as being a rock star. He was handsome, had a charming smile, and agreed with everything my father said. He doted on Chloe, and therefore, he could do no wrong. They saw him not as a 26-year-old man who still worked part-time at a coffee shop, but as the perfect partner for their perfect daughter. He was absorbed into the family unit with a speed that was dizzying. Suddenly, every family dinner, every weekend plan, had to include Kevin. He was the missing piece they never knew they needed, and his presence only served to highlight my place on the periphery even more. I had become the perpetual fifth wheel in a four-person family. This trip, the one I was planning, was supposed to change that. It was my grand gesture, my attempt to create a memory so special that it would have to include me. I was going to pay for a perfect week, buying my way back into the family circle. I just didn't realize they were already planning to trade my ticket for a new one. The idea for the trip started on a dreary Tuesday afternoon at work. I was in the middle of debugging a particularly nasty piece of code, staring at lines of text until my eyes blurred. My phone buzzed with a picture from my mom. It was a selfie of her, my dad, Chloe, and Kevin, all beaming at a local fall festival. "Wish you were here," the text read, a casual sting I'd grown accustomed to. They hadn't invited me. I was staring at their smiling faces, a snapshot of a happy family, and realized with a jolt that I wasn't in it. I felt a familiar ache, a longing not just to be included, but to be essential. That evening, I went down a rabbit hole of travel websites. I wasn't just looking for a vacation, I was looking for an opportunity. I wanted to create an experience so unique and so wonderful that it would be impossible for them to sideline me. I wanted to build a memory, one where I was the architect. That's when I found it, the Serenity Peak Cabin. It wasn't just a cabin, it was a work of art. Perched on a mountainside with panoramic windows overlooking a snow-dusted valley, it was the definition of luxury. It had a stone fireplace, a gourmet kitchen, a hot tub on the deck, and access to private ski trails. It was breathtaking, and it was expensive. I spent the next hour with my budget spreadsheets open. I'm a saver by nature, and my job as a software engineer pays well. I had a healthy, discretionary fund that I usually allocated to investments or home improvements. But looking at the pictures of that cabin, I saw a different kind of investment, an investment in my family, an investment in my own sense of belonging. The cost for a full week, including taxes and fees, was significant. It was more than just a generous gift, it was a statement. A statement that I was successful, that I was generous, and that I wanted to share that success with them. I took a deep breath and clicked book now. The confirmation email felt like a jolt of pure hope. The next step was presenting the gift. I printed out a beautiful brochure I made myself with glossy photos of the cabin and a detailed itinerary. I invited my parents and Chloe over for dinner, pointedly not mentioning Kevin. I wanted this to be about our core family. When I handed them the brochure, their reactions were everything I had hoped for. My mother's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. My father kept shaking his head, saying, "Lena, you shouldn't have. This is incredible." Chloe squealed with delight, grabbing my arm and jumping up and down. "A whole week, in a place like this? Lena, you're the best sister ever." For a fleeting moment, I felt it. The warmth, the appreciation, the feeling of being the center of their positive attention. We spent the rest of the evening poring over the details. I told them I had handled everything. The cabin, the rental of a large, comfortable SUV to handle the mountain roads, even prepaid ski passes for all of us. "All you have to do is pack your warmest clothes and be ready to relax," I said, beaming. There was no mention of Kevin. I assumed, naively, that they understood the spirit of the gift. This was for the four of us, a return to our roots. In the weeks leading up to the trip, the energy was different. My mom would call me just to talk about how excited she was. My dad sent me links to hiking trails near the cabin. Chloe texted me pictures of ski outfits she was thinking of buying. I felt a cautious optimism bloom in my chest. Maybe this was it. Maybe this grand gesture was enough to reset the dynamic. I allowed myself to daydream about the trip. Sitting by the fire playing board games, cooking a big meal together in the gourmet kitchen, laughing as my dad tried to ski for the first time in 20 years. These were the simple, wholesome family moments I craved, the kind that always seemed to happen when I wasn't around. I threw myself into the final preparations with meticulous care. I created a shared digital itinerary, complete with confirmation numbers and timelines. I booked the luxury SUV, a model big enough for the four of us and all our luggage, under my name. The cabin policy was strict. The primary guest, whose name and CR. Edit card were on the reservation, had to be present at check-in. I made a note of this, a tiny detail of administrative responsibility that I barely registered at the time. I even curated a playlist of my dad's favorite classic rock and my mom's favorite 80s pop for the drive-up. Every detail was an act of love, a brick in the foundation of the perfect family memory I was so desperate to build. The deception was so subtle I almost missed it. A week before we were set to leave, Chloe called me. "Hey, so excited for next week," she chirped. "Quick question, what's the food situation? Kevin's a vegetarian, so I was just thinking about what we'd need to get for him." I froze, my hand tightening on my phone. "For him?" I asked, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. "I thought this was just for the four of us." There was a slight pause. "Oh, well, yeah, of course," she said, her voice a little too bright. "I just meant for when we get back. He's going to be so bored without me for a whole week, you know?" She laughed it off, and I, wanting to believe her, let it go. It was a red flag, a tiny crack in the perfect facade, but I papered over it with my own hope. I told myself I was being paranoid. They wouldn't. Not with a gift this big, this personal, they just wouldn't. The night before we were scheduled to leave, my mom sent a text to our family group chat. "Can't wait for our family adventure tomorrow. So proud of you for making this happen, Lena." I read the text 3 times, feeling a surge of validation. My plan was working. I packed my suitcase, laying out my warmest sweater for the drive. I fell asleep that night with a genuine, unforced smile on my face, completely unaware that the dream I had so carefully constructed was about to be demolished. The morning air was crisp and bright, the kind of perfect autumn day that feels like a promise. I woke up early, buzzing with an energy I hadn't felt in years. I double-checked my suitcase, made sure I had the folder with all the reservation printouts, and carried my bags downstairs. The plan was to meet at my parents' house at 9 a.m., load up the rental SUV that I was picking up on the way, and hit the road. I walked into their living room, my face already arranged in a happy, expectant smile. The smile faltered and died on my lips. The scene in front of me was not the one I had played out in my head. My mom, Susan, was nervously rearranging coasters on the coffee table. My dad, Mark, was staring intently out the window as if fascinated by the mailman. Chloe was sitting on the sofa, looking down at her hands, and next to her, with his arms slung casually around her shoulders, was Kevin. His duffel bag was by the door, right next to my sister's. A cold dread, heavy and sickening, began to pool in my stomach. "Hey," I said, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet room. "I'm here. I was just about to go pick up the car." My dad turned from the window, his expression carefully neutral. "Morning, Lena. Actually, about that, we need to have a little chat." My mom wrung her hands. "Now, don't get upset, honey," she began, the classic opening to a conversation where I was definitely expected to get upset. "There's just been a tiny little change of plans." I looked from my mom's anxious face to my dad's stoicism, to Chloe's deliberate avoidance of my gaze. I knew, with absolute certainty, what was coming next. I felt like I was watching a car crash in slow motion, one I was strapped into. "Kevin is going to come with us," Chloe said softly, still not looking at me. "His band's gig got canceled, and he was going to be all alone this week. I just couldn't bear the thought of that." I stared at her, then at Kevin, who offered me a weak, placating smile. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. I had spent thousands of dollars, poured weeks of emotional energy and planning into this, all for it to be hijacked by a canceled gig. "The cabin only sleeps 4, I stated, my voice flat. It wasn't a question, it was a fact. a fact I had repeated multiple times during the planning stages. "We know, sweetie, and that's the tricky part," my mom said, stepping forward as if to soothe a startled animal. "We talked it over last night, and well, there's just no way Chloe can go without Kevin. They're inseparable, and since the cabin has that strict four-person limit..." She trailed off, leaving the devastating conclusion hanging in the air for me to grasp. My dad cleared his throat, finally taking over. "Lena, you're so independent. You've got your own place, your own life. You understand. This is a big deal for Chloe and Kevin, for their relationship. We think it's important to support that." I felt a wave of dizziness, a surreal sense of detachment from my own body. Did they hear themselves? They were using my independence, the very quality they claimed to admire, as a weapon against me. They were telling me that because I was strong, I didn't need a place in my own family. My throat felt tight, and my eyes began to sting. "So let me get this straight," I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to keep it steady. "I planned this entire trip. I paid for this entire trip. It was my gift to my family. And you're telling me that I don't get to go? That I'm being kicked out for my sister's boyfriend of 6 months?" "Don't be so dramatic, Lena," Chloe snapped, finally looking up at me, her face a mask of defensive indignation. "It's not like that. We just swap weeks if we could, but the reservation is non-refundable. You're making this a much bigger deal than it needs to be. We'll bring you back a souvenir." A souvenir? They were going to bring me back a cheap keychain or a snow globe from a vacation that I had funded, a vacation they had stolen from me. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it was staggering. It wasn't just an oversight, it was a deliberate act of erasure. They had discussed it, weighed the options, and concluded that I was the expendable one. My contribution, my feelings, my presence, none of it mattered as much as Chloe's desire to not be separated from her boyfriend. "I am the one who paid for it," I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "My name is on everything, the car, the cabin." "And we appreciate that so much, Lena, really," my dad said, his tone condescendingly patient. "Think of it as your gift to Chloe and Kevin, a way to show your support for her happiness. We'll pay you back for your spot when we can." My spot. They had quantified my place in the family and determined its cash value, payable at their convenience. That was the moment the hurt curdled into something else. It was a cold, hard, clarifying anger. The thousands of little cuts from my childhood, the telescope, the canceled party, the financial disparities, all coalesced into this one giant, gaping wound. They weren't just careless, they were cruel. They saw my generosity not as a gift to be cherished, but as a resource to be exploited. I looked at their faces, one by one. My mother, desperate for peace at any cost. My father, hiding behind a wall of flawed logic. My sister, radiating a sense of entitlement so profound it was almost impressive. And Kevin, the catalyst, looking uncomfortable but doing absolutely nothing to object to the monstrously unfair situation playing out in his favor. I took a deep, shuddering breath. The tears that had threatened to fall retreated, replaced by an icy resolve. I could scream, I could cry, I could plead. I had done all of those things before, and it had never changed a thing. It only ever ended with me being labeled as difficult or too sensitive. This time would be different. I gave them a single tight nod. "Fine," I said. The word was a shard of glass, small and sharp. A wave of visible relief washed over the room. My mom smiled brightly. "Oh, thank you, Lena. I knew you'd understand. You've always been the bigger person." "We'll have a great time," Chloe added, already pulling out her phone, no doubt to post a picture of their packed bags. "We'll send you lots of pictures." I didn't say another word. I turned around, walked over to the front door, and picked up my own suitcase. I didn't look back. I opened the door, stepped out into the bright morning sun, and closed it quietly behind me, leaving them to their plans. As I walked to my car, I could feel their collective relief radiating through the closed door. They thought they had won. They thought I was just slinking away to my quiet, independent life to nurse my hurt feelings. They had absolutely no idea what I was about to do. The bigger person had just left the building, and she was taking the entire vacation with her. I managed to get into my car and shut the door before the first sob escaped. It was a wrenching, silent cry, the kind that shakes your whole body. The betrayal was so profound, so complete, it felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel, the cool plastic a stark contrast to my burning face. All the happy daydreams I'd had about this week, the laughter, the fireside chats, the feeling of belonging crumbled into dust. They didn't just uninvite me, they discarded me. They had looked at my gift, my gesture of love, and saw it as nothing more than a transaction, a set of tickets they could reassign at will. For a few long minutes, I just sat there, drowning in the pain. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Chloe. "Can you send me the confirmation hash for the SUV rental? We're heading out soon." The sheer nerve of it sent a fresh wave of anger through me, so potent it burned away the tears. They were already moving on, logistics and all, without a single backward glance. My hurt wasn't even a speed bump for them. It was just an administrative detail they assumed I would handle. That's when the switch flipped. The image of the all Mom, Dad, Chloe, and Kevin, piling into their cramped sedan, smug and self-satisfied, flashed in my mind. They were heading off to enjoy a luxury vacation funded by the daughter they had just kicked to the curb. They were counting on my compliance, on my lifelong training to be the good, understanding one. And in that moment, I decided that my training was officially over. I put the car in drive, but I didn't go home. I drove to a nearby park, pulled into a quiet spot overlooking a duck pond, and turned off the engine. The anger was no longer a hot, chaotic mess. It had cooled into something focused and clear. It was resolve. I took out my phone, my hand surprisingly steady. Chloe wanted the confirmation number for the rental SUV. Fine, I'd deal with that first. I pulled up the email from the rental company. My name was at the top. My credit card was on file. I wasn't just the benefactor, I was the sole legal authority for this entire trip. A slow, grim smile touched my lips. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about consequences. They had made a decision to remove me from the equation. So, I was going to remove myself from the equation, completely and entirely. I found the customer service number for the rental agency and dialed. A cheerful agent answered. "Thank you for calling Prestige Auto Rentals. How can I help you?" "Hello," I said, my voice calm and even. "I need to cancel a reservation for today. The last name is my own, Lena, and the confirmation number is..." I read off the number from the email. "Okay, ma'am, I have that reservation right here. A premium SUV, pick up at 10 a.m. You're sure you want to cancel?" "Yes, I'm sure," I said. "My plans have changed." "All right, no problem. Since you're canceling on the same day, there is a small cancellation fee, but the rest of the prepayment will be refunded to your card on file." "That's perfectly fine," I said. "Thank you." "Okay, Ms. Lena, your reservation has been canceled. The vehicle will be released back into our inventory. Have a nice day." "You too," I said and hung up, one down. I pictured them arriving at the counter, giving my name and the confused look on the agent's face. The thought brought me a sliver of grim satisfaction. Next on the list, the prepaid ski passes. This was an easy one, done through the ski resort's online portal. I logged into my account, found the order for 4 all-access passes, and clicked the Request Refund button. The policy was clear: full refund if canceled more than 24 hours before the start date. A message popped up: "Your refund has been processed and will appear on your statement in 5-7 business days." Click. Done. Finally, the main event, the crown jewel of their betrayal, the Serenity Peak cabin. I stared at the confirmation email, at the beautiful photos of the place I had so eagerly booked. This one hurt the most. This was the heart of the dream. I took a deep breath and dialed the number for the cabin management company. A warm, professional voice answered. "Good morning, Mountain Luxury Retreats." "Good morning," I said. "I have a reservation checking in today under the name Lena, and I need to make a change." My heart was pounding now. This felt final. "Of course, let me pull that up for you. Yes, I see it here. The Serenity Peak cabin for 7 nights. What sort of change did you need to make, Ms. Lena?" I need to cancel the reservation, I said, the words feeling heavy. There was a pause. Oh, I see. I am sorry to hear that. I must inform you, as per our booking policy, cancellations within 14 days of the check-in date are non-refundable. You would be forfeiting the entire amount paid. I had known this. I had read the fine print, and it was a lot of money. But as I sat there, the cost felt insignificant compared to the cost of letting them walk all over me one more time. The money was already spent in my mind, an investment in a dream that had turned into a nightmare. Now, it was going to be an investment in a lesson in self-respect. I understand that, I told the agent. I still need to cancel. Okay, ma'am. I just need to remind you one more time that no refund will be issued. I understand completely, I said, my voice firm. Please proceed with the cancellation. All right, I've now canceled booking number 8,675,309. The Serenity Peak cabin is now available for those dates. Is there anything else I can help you with today? One more question, actually, I said, a thought occurring to me. Your policy states the primary guest must be present for check-in with the credit card used for booking, correct? Yes, that's correct. It's a strict security policy to prevent fraud. So even if I hadn't canceled, if a group showed up without me and my credit card, they wouldn't have been able to check in anyway. That is correct, ma'am. The person whose name is on the reservation absolutely has to be here. No exceptions. Thank you, I said. That clarifies everything. I hung up the phone and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It was done. The entire, meticulously planned, exorbitantly expensive trip had been dismantled in under 15 minutes from the driver's seat of my car in a public park. There was no grand explosion, no yelling match, just a series of quiet, deliberate clicks and conversations. It was a strange feeling, a cocktail of loss, sadness, and a fierce, unfamiliar surge of power. I had lost a significant amount of money and, in all likelihood, what little relationship I had left with my family. But I had gained something far more valuable. I had taken my power back. I had drawn a line not in the sand, but in solid rock. I leaned my head back against the seat, watching the ducks glide across the pond, and for the first time all day, I felt a sense of peace. The storm was coming, I knew. But for now, in my small car, there was only a profound and satisfying calm. I drove home in a state of surreal calm. The anger and hurt were still there, simmering beneath the surface, but they were overlaid with a strange sense of tranquility. I had done something for myself, something decisive and final. I walked into my quiet apartment, and instead of feeling lonely, I felt serene. It was my space, a sanctuary where I was not an afterthought or a means to an end. I made a pot of tea, curled up on my sofa with a blanket, and put on a movie I'd been wanting to see. I was determined to treat this day not as a day of loss, but as the first day of a new chapter. My phone, which I had placed face down on the coffee table, remained silent for the first couple of hours. I knew the drive to the rental car agency would take them about 30 minutes. I imagined them walking in, Chloe probably still texting, my dad confidently striding up to the counter to announce their arrival. The first buzz from my phone came at 9:48 a.m. It was a text from my dad. Dad, hey, at Prestige. They're saying the reservation was canceled. Some mix-up, can you call them? I read the message and took a sip of my tea. I didn't respond. I could picture the scene perfectly, the initial confidence turning to annoyance. My mother would be getting flustered. Chloe would be complaining about the delay. 10 minutes later, another buzz, this time from my mom. Mom, Lena, call your father. The man at the counter is being very unhelpful. He says you canceled the car. Please fix this. Please fix this. The three little words that had defined my role in the family for as long as I could remember. Something is wrong, Lena, please fix this. I stared at the message, a hollow feeling in my chest. They weren't asking what happened. They weren't concerned that I might be upset. They just saw a problem and expected me to be the solution. I ignored the text. Another 15 minutes passed. A flurry of messages came in. Chloe, Lena, what did you do? We can't get the SUV. Now we have to take our car and it's going to be super cramped with all our stuff and Kevin's guitar. This is so annoying. Call me. Dad, Lena, I am not playing games. Your sister is upset. Answer your phone. Mom, honey, please, we're going to be late. Just tell us what happened. I turned the phone to silent mode. The constant buzzing was starting to fray my newfound peace. They had made their decision. They were now driving to the mountains, a 4-hour journey in their smaller car. Annoyed and uncomfortable, but still utterly oblivious to the true extent of the situation. They thought the canceled car was the main problem, a frustrating hiccup caused by my dramatic behavior. They had no idea it was just the appetizer. I spent the next few hours trying to distract myself. I cleaned my apartment. I replied to work emails. I watered my plants. But a part of my brain was a running clock, tracking their journey. By 2:30 p.m., I estimated they would be arriving at the resort, tired and cranky from the cramped drive, but excited to finally see the magnificent cabin. I braced myself. At 2:41 p.m., my phone lit up with an incoming call from my dad. I let it go to voicemail. A second later, a call from my mom. I ignored it. Then Chloe. Ignored. Then a string of texts began, each more frantic than the last. Dad, what is going on? The cabin management is saying our reservation is canceled. They're saying you forfeited all the money. This is a joke, right? Mom, Lena, this isn't funny. We're standing here in the lobby and they won't give us a key. They said you called this morning. Why would you do that? You've ruined everything. Chloe, I cannot believe you. We drove all the way out here. There are no other cabins available. The whole resort is booked. What are we supposed to do? You are the most selfish person I have ever met. Then came a text from a number I didn't recognize. Unknown, this is Kevin. Chloe is crying. Her parents are freaking out. You need to call them and fix this right now. This is completely insane. The sheer entitlement was breathtaking. He, the very reason I was not on this trip, was now ordering me to fix the consequences of the situation he had benefited from. The voicemails started piling up. I listened to the first one from my father out of a morbid curiosity. His voice was shaking with rage. Lena, I don't know what kind of stunt you think you're pulling, but you have gone too far. You have embarrassed this family. You have stranded us in the middle of nowhere. All that money. Just gone because you couldn't handle not getting your way for once. You will call me back immediately. Immediately. I deleted the voicemail without listening to the end. The narrative was already written in their minds. I was the villain. I was the selfish, dramatic child who threw a tantrum and ruined everyone's fun. There was no glimmer of self-awareness, no inkling that their own actions had been the catalyst for everything. They hadn't just pushed me out. They had pushed me off a cliff and were now furious that I hadn't magically sprouted wings to fly back up and rescue them. The phone continued to light up, a relentless beacon of their panic and fury. I watched it, feeling strangely detached. It felt like watching a storm rage from behind a thick pane of glass. The chaos was theirs, the drama was theirs, the consequences were theirs. For the first time, their problems were not my own. I didn't feel happy, not exactly, but I didn't feel guilty either. I felt free. I picked up my phone not to call them back, but to block their numbers. Dad, Mom, Chloe, Kevin. One by one, I severed the connection. The barrage of notifications stopped. My apartment fell silent again, and the quiet was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. For 2 days, I lived in a bubble of blissful silence. Blocking their numbers was like closing a door on a hurricane. The constant pressure, the background hum of expectation and disappointment that had been the soundtrack to my life, was gone. I worked from home, I ordered my favorite food, I reconnected with friends I'd been neglecting. I felt lighter, as if I had taken off a heavy coat I hadn't realized I was wearing. But I knew the bubble couldn't last forever. The silence was an artificial peace, and the real confrontation was still to come. It came on the third day, via an email from my mother with the subject line, "We need to talk." My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened it. The email was short and surprisingly subdued. Lena, we are back home. We found a motel for 2 nights and drove back yesterday. This has been a disaster. I know you are angry, but we are your family. Please unblock me. I need to talk to you. part of me, the old, conditioned part, felt a pang of guilt. I pictured them in a dingy motel, a far cry from the luxury cabin they'd been expecting. But then I remembered the reason they were there. I remembered the casual cruelty in their voices, the dismissive wave of their hands as they erased me from my own gift. I took a few deep breaths, steadied myself, and decided I was ready to face them, but on my own terms. I unblocked my mother's number and sent a simple text. "You can call me." My phone rang less than a minute later. I took one last fortifying breath and answered, putting the call on speakerphone. "Lena, oh, thank goodness." My mother's voice was strained, exhausted. "I'm here," I said quietly. "What you did it was the cruelest thing anyone has ever done to me," she began, her voice already thick with emotion. "To us." Before I could respond, I heard my father's voice booming in the background. "Cruel, it was vindictive, it was childish. Do you have any idea how much money you threw away? How you humiliated us? We had to drive home in disgrace." Chloe's voice joined the chorus, shrill and accusatory. "Kevin thinks our family is crazy now. I hope you're happy. You ruined my relationship." The verbal assault was exactly what I had expected. The three of them, a united front of indignation, ready to lay the blame squarely at my feet. In the past, I would have crumbled. I would have apologized, tried to explain myself, and ended up taking responsibility for their feelings. But something inside me had fundamentally shifted. I waited for their initial volley to run out of steam. When there was a pause, I spoke, my voice devoid of the emotion that was raging inside me. "I didn't throw any money away. I considered it the price of a lesson, a very expensive but necessary lesson." "A lesson?" my father scoffed. "What lesson? How to be a spoiled brat?" "No," I said, my voice gaining strength. "A lesson for me. I finally learned that my place in this family is conditional. I learned that my value is measured in what I can provide, and that my feelings are considered an inconvenience. You didn't just ask me to give up my spot on a trip. You made a calculated decision that a man you've known for 6 months was more important than your own daughter and sister. You took a gift that I gave you, a gift that came from my heart and my hard work, and you told me that I wasn't welcome to be a part of it." "That's not what happened," my mother insisted. "We were just trying to make everyone happy. You're so rigid, Lena. You never know how to just go with the flow." "Go with the flow?" I repeated, a humorless laugh escaping my lips. "My entire life has been me going with the flow. Your flow, Chloe's flow. I went with the flow when my 10th birthday present was given to my sister. I went with the flow when my graduation party was canceled for a pottery class. I have been going with the flow for 28 years, and the current has always dragged me under while it carried Chloe along. This time, I decided to get out of the water." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I had never spoken to them like this before, without tears, without pleading, just with cold, hard facts. "The trip was booked in my name," I continued, pressing my advantage. "The car was in my name. The cabin policy explicitly stated that the primary guest, me, had to be present at check-in. Even if I had done nothing, you would have been turned away. But that's beside the point. The trip, in my mind, was a family experience. When you told me I was no longer a part of that family experience, the trip ceased to exist. You can't have a gift without the giver. You can't take the present and throw the person who gave it to you in the trash. So you just decided to punish us," Chloe whimpered. "This wasn't a punishment," I said, and I realized I truly meant it. "It was a consequence. It was the natural result of your actions. You treated me like I didn't matter. So I removed the me that you didn't seem to want around, and it just so happened that me was attached to the car, the cabin, and the ski passes. You didn't want me, so you didn't get my things. It's actually very simple." My mother started to cry softly. "I don't understand how you can be so cold, Lena. We're your family." "You are my family," I acknowledged, and a wave of sadness washed over me. "And I love you, but I don't like how you treat me. I don't like being the reliable, sensible fallback plan. And I won't be that person anymore. I'm not fixing this. There is nothing to fix. What's done is done." "So what now?" my father asked, his voice low and defeated. Now I need space, I said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. A lot of it. I need time to figure out who I am without constantly trying to earn my place at your table. Don't call me. Don't email me. When and if you are ready to have a conversation where you understand and take responsibility for your part in this, I might be ready to listen. But until then, we have nothing more to say. Before they could respond, before my resolve could waver, I ended the call. My hand was shaking, but my heart felt steady. The hurricane had hit, and I was still standing. The foundation of my old life was in ruins, but for the first time, I felt like I had solid ground underneath my feet, ground that I had claimed all for myself. The weeks that followed the confrontation were some of the strangest of my life. The silence from my family was absolute. No calls, no texts, no emails. At first, it was unnerving. Every buzz of my phone made my stomach clench, anticipating a fresh wave of anger or a guilt-laden plea. But as days turned into a week, and then two, the silence began to feel less like an absence and more like a presence, the presence of peace. The mental energy I had always reserved for navigating my family's dynamics, anticipating Chloe's needs, managing my parents' expectations, swallowing my own disappointments, was suddenly free. It was like I'd been running a dozen resource-heavy programs in the background of my mind for my entire life, and I had finally, mercifully, closed them all. I poured that newfound energy into myself. I took on a challenging new project at work that I previously would have shied away from, fearing it would take too much time away from potential family obligations. I started hiking on the weekends, exploring the trails around my city. I reconnected with old friends, the ones who had slowly drifted away because I was so often busy with family. I had coffee with a friend who, after listening to the whole story, looked at me and said, "It's about time, Lena. We've been waiting for you to pick yourself." Her words struck me with the force of a revelation. Other people had seen it all along. I was the only one who had refused to open my eyes. About a month after the incident, I got a call from a cousin, my aunt's daughter, who I was friendly with. "Hey, Lena," she said tentatively. "Just checking in. Things sound intense over there." "You could say that," I replied with a dry chuckle. "Yeah, my mom got an earful from your mom," she said. "They're telling everyone you had a massive, unprovoked meltdown and sabotaged the family vacation, out of jealousy of Chloe and Kevin." I felt a flash of the old anger, the injustice of their twisted narrative. "Of course, that's the story," I sighed. "Don't worry," my cousin added quickly. "None of us are buying it. We've all seen the Chloe show for years. Honestly, most of the family is secretly giving you a standing ovation." My dad said, "Good for her." They had to borrow money from him to pay for the motel and the gas to get home. By the way, they were a complete mess. Hearing that offered a strange sort of validation. It wasn't about their suffering, but about the fact that the consequences were real and visible to others. Their actions had a cost, not just to me, but to their own finances and reputation within the wider family. They couldn't spin this away as easily as they thought. The true turning point for me came one rainy Saturday afternoon. I was cleaning out a closet and found an old photo album. I flipped through it, seeing picture after picture of my family. There I was at age 7, standing slightly apart from my parents who were fawning over a 2-year-old Chloe. There I was at 16, with my arm in a cast from a sports injury, watching Chloe blow out the candles on her birthday cake. Page after page told the same story, a story I had been living but had never fully read. I stopped at a photo from a few years ago. It was Christmas. My parents had just opened my gift to them, a new, expensive coffee machine they'd been wanting. They were smiling politely at the camera. Next to them, Chloe was holding up her gift from them, a designer handbag, and her smile was genuine, ecstatic. In that moment, looking at the photograph, I felt a pang of sadness not for myself, but for them. I felt sad for the family we could have been if their love hadn't been so unbalanced. I felt sorry for my parents, who were so blinded by their favoritism that they couldn't see they were pushing one daughter away. And I felt a flicker of pity for Chloe, who had been so coddled that she had no concept of accountability or genuine gratitude. I closed the album. I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt done. The need for their approval, the desperate ache to be seen and valued by them, had finally dissolved. It wasn't my job to fix them or to make them understand. My job was to save myself, and I had. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my family. Maybe one day they will genuinely reflect on what happened and reach out with a real apology. Maybe they won't. But for the first time, either outcome feels acceptable. My happiness is no longer contingent on their validation. I am planning my own trip for next spring, a solo adventure to a place I've always wanted to see. I will book it in my name, pay for it with my own money, and I will be the only guest. My spot is guaranteed. The karma that hit my family the moment I walked away wasn't supernatural. It wasn't a lightning bolt from a vengeful universe. The karma was simply me. It was me, finally recognizing my own worth and calmly, quietly, refusing to be devalued any longer. They didn't just lose a vacation, they lost their safety net, their fixer, their emotional doormat. And I, in turn, found my freedom. So I have to ask the Reddit community, was I wrong for canceling the trip and letting them face the consequences, or was it the only way to finally make them understand? I feel at peace with my decision, but a small part of me still wonders, what would you have done? After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories. We are all human. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it. Thank you for your time.